If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe. We post one every week. I was plating the saffron reduction in the test kitchen at the Golden Whisk when my phone buzzed against the steel counter. I almost ignored it, until I saw the sender. Richard at Ellsworth Publications. My hands went cold. I hadn't seen that name in 21 years. The subject line, one word. Family. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened it. Claire, your mother, and I saw the article about Ryan. We're so proud. We'll be attending the Innovator of the Year Gala Friday to celebrate our grandson publicly. It's time to heal. Our grandson. 21 years of silence, and that's how they reappear, not with an apology, but a press release. I read it twice. The arrogance was breathtaking. Once upon a time, that message would have destroyed me. I would have cried until I couldn't breathe. But not now. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even reply. I just took a screenshot, forwarded it to my husband, Daniel, and typed 2 words, handle it. Then I turned back to the stove. The sauce shimmered gold in the pan, patient, perfect. I wouldn't let ghosts make it burn. This wasn't a family crisis. It was pest control. Still, my mind drifted back, to the library. Boston. 21 years ago. The smell of leather and my father's cigar clinging to the air like judgment. I was 17, clutching a pregnancy test in my shaking hand. He didn't yell. Richard Ellsworth didn't need volume. His voice was as sharp and flat as a contract. You've ruined a merger, he said. A what? I whispered. The marriage to the Collins boy, he continued, like he was explaining a failed investment. Years of planning. And you threw it away for this. He didn't say, baby. He said, this. My mother, Margaret, sat near the fire, pretending to read. She didn't look up once. Her silence said everything. I wasn't a daughter, I was an asset gone bad. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the table. $500. That's what you have. You'll leave tonight. You'll never use our name again. I remember staring at the bills, realizing that's all my existence was worth to them, a failed investment being written off. That night, I slept on a bench in the Boston Common, wrapped in a coat too thin for the wind, one hand over my stomach. I wasn't Claire Ellsworth anymore. I was no one. The memory snapped as my phone rang again, Daniel's voice calm on the other end. Okay, he said simply. I'll take care of it. I looked at the saffron reduction. It had thickened perfectly. I smiled faintly. They had exiled me for bringing a life into the world. Now that life, their unwanted grandson, was being honored nationwide. And this time, I wouldn't burn for them. Daniel's voice was low, controlled, the one he used for legal battles. I've blocked their emails and numbers from all your devices. They can't reach you directly again. Thank you, I said, staring out the kitchen window at the gray drizzle over the city. That's it, then. Not quite, he sighed. I blocked them, Claire, but not before they made their move. They've already contacted the Innovator Award organizers. My grip tightened on the phone. What did they do? What do you think? His tone hardened. They introduced themselves as Dr. and Mrs. Richard Ellsworth, Ryan's proud grandparents. Said there must have been a mistake and demanded a table, front row center. A short, bitter laugh escaped me. Of course they did. The show has to have a good view. Exactly, he said. But it gets worse. Check your mother's Instagram. I hung up and opened the app. Margaret Ellsworth's profile was a glossy parade of charity galas and art fundraisers. But at the top, there it was. A photo I hadn't seen in over 20 years, me at age 10, holding a riding trophy, my braid tight, my smile forced. The caption read, "Always knew the Ellsworth family had exceptional genes. So proud of our legacy and all it produces. Hashtag Ellsworth Publications, hashtag legacy, hashtag proud." The comments were nauseating. "Margaret, this is wonderful. He gets that brilliance from his grandparents. A beautiful legacy." They were rewriting history in real time, erasing 2 decades of abandonment with one filtered photo and a hashtag. Daniel called back, his voice calm but edged with steel. "You saw it." "I did. Claire, listen to me. They don't want Ryan. Not really. They want what he represents." Silence stretched between us. "I did some digging," he continued. "Ellsworth Publications is circling the drain. They missed the digital shift, their stock's tanking. They need a win, something shiny for investors. A genius grandson with an award is the perfect story." "So I'm not a daughter," I said softly. "And he's not a grandson. We're just assets," he corrected. "Ryan's their lifeline. This isn't family, it's strategy. A narcissistic Hoover. They're starving for relevance, and they think they can feed off you again. Don't take the bait, Claire. Treat it like business." I nodded, the words settling like iron. Business move. That's exactly what it was. The kind Beatrice would have seen coming from miles away. I thought of her, how could I not? Beatrice Weller, the woman who actually saved me. 3 days into my exile, I was shivering on a park bench in the Boston Common when a gentle hand touched my shoulder. I flinched, expecting a cop, or worse. Instead, I saw a woman in her 70s with sharp, kind eyes and a camel coat. "You don't belong out here," she said simply. Beatrice was a retired constitutional law professor, a widow who'd lost her only daughter in a car crash years before. She saw me, not as a scandal, not as a failure, but as someone worth saving. She gave me her guest room, made me tea, sat beside me when Ryan was born. She was the first person after me to hold him, the only grandmother he ever knew. At her oak desk surrounded by law books, she used to say, "Claire, don't let anyone define your worth. Legacy isn't blood, it's what you choose to build." When I told her about my dream for the Golden Whisk, she didn't hesitate. She wired me the seed money herself. "Build your own empire," she said. "It's the only one they can't take." Beatrice died 2 years ago. But she'd planned for this, meticulously. I knew it the next afternoon, sitting in Daniel's office, watching him open a thick folder with her name on it. Even gone, she was still protecting me. Daniel slid a thick, leather-bound document across his desk. "Beatrice's will," he said. "I've gone through it 3 times. He tapped a clause near the bottom. "She left you and Ryan everything, $25 million. But it's locked inside an ironclad trust. No one can touch it." Then he reached for another folder, thinner, yellowed at the edges. "And this," he added, "is the document your parents' lawyer had you sign 21 years ago. The one you barely remember." His finger traced a line of faded ink. "It's a mutual relinquishment of parental rights. Legally, Claire, they're not your family. They have no more claim on you or Ryan than a stranger at the grocery store." He smiled faintly. Beatrice made sure I kept the original. She knew this day would come. I exhaled, a sound that carried 20 years of tension. "So they have nothing. The posts, the calls, it's all just noise." "It's noise," Daniel agreed, "but calculated noise. The first wave of something bigger." His phone buzzed. He frowned, reading the alert. "Damn it. What is it?" He started typing fast. "Court docket update. Ryan's been sued." My stomach twisted. Sued? For what? Intellectual property theft. That's insane. His AI app is completely original. He built it from scratch. I know, Daniel said, scanning the filing. But the plaintiff, his voice hardened. It's Mark. Mark Reeves. I froze. My high school boyfriend. The boy who promised forever, then vanished the day I told him I was pregnant. The biological father who disappeared without a word. Daniel kept reading. He's claiming that Ryan's accessibility algorithm came from a concept you two discussed in chemistry class. He wants 50% of the company. He's broke, I whispered. A failed venture capitalist. He has no case. He doesn't need one, Daniel said grimly. He just needs money. Someone's funding him. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling records. Law firm retainers, wire transfers, here. He turned the screen toward me. Payment from a holding company. I recognized the name instantly, Ellsworth Publications acquisition arm. They're paying him, I said, numb. Daniel nodded. It's a pincer move. Coordinated. Mark files a fake lawsuit, keeps Ryan tied up, drags him through headlines. Meanwhile, Richard and Margaret play the grieving grandparents, pleading for reconciliation. They'll offer to make it all go away in exchange for what they really want. Access, I said quietly. They want your son's success. His name. His wealth. And they'll burn you both to get it. The Innovator of the Year gala was exactly their battlefield, opulent, glittering, crawling with media. The ballroom gleamed with chandeliers, the air thick with money and perfume. Cameras flashed, tuxedos shimmered, and at table 1, front and center, sat Richard and Margaret Ellsworth. Margaret sparkled in diamonds, every inch the picture of maternal pride. Richard, ever the polished publisher, nodded regally to the crowd. Beside them sat Mark Reeves, playing his part in their performance. The Tech Council's CEO took the stage. And now, our 2025 Innovator of the Year, the visionary whose work in accessibility AI is transforming how we interact with the world. Mr. Ryan Ellsworth. He didn't finish. Richard and Margaret were already standing, clapping the loudest, smiling as though they'd raised him themselves. Ryan stepped onto the stage, impossibly calm, impossibly young. The lights hit his face, the room went still, and he accepted the Crystal Award with steady hands. Thank you, he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom, clear, sure, unshakable. And in that moment, for the first time, they looked small. Thank you to the committee. Richard and Margaret Ellsworth were glowing, soaking in the spotlight. I saw my mother dab at her eyes for the cameras, a perfect performance. I'm here tonight because of a legacy, Ryan said into the mic. My parents straightened, smiling for their big moment. But it's not the legacy you think. Their smiles faltered. 21 years ago, Ryan continued, a 17-year-old girl was kicked out of her Beacon Hill home. She was pregnant and had $450 to her name. She slept on a park bench in the Boston Common for 3 nights. Scared. Alone. The ballroom fell silent. The cameras turned from Ryan to table 1. That girl, he said, was my mother. Gasps rippled through the room. My chest tightened. And the woman who saved her wasn't family. Her name was Beatrice Weller, a retired law professor who found her in that park and gave her a home. She became my grandmother. She taught my mom how to build something from nothing. She taught me that circumstances don't define you. He turned his gaze directly toward table 1. My father's face had gone ghost pale. My mother's hand trembled on her wine glass. The people who threw my mom out 21 years ago, Ryan said, steady and unflinching, are sitting at that table tonight. They didn't come here out of love or remorse. They came because their publishing empire is collapsing, and they needed a new, shiny story. They came because they wanted a piece of this. He held up the crystal award. When my mother refused to let them back in, they funded my biological father, Mark Reeves, to sue me. A fake lawsuit claiming I stole my own work, meant to drain me until I gave in. The crowd gasped. "Don't take my word for it," Ryan said, clicking a remote. The giant screen behind him flashed to life, emails, wire transfers, all from Ellsworth Publications holding company to Mark Reeves. The room erupted in shock. Cameras whirred. My parents sat motionless under the harsh lights. "They believe in blood legacy," Ryan said, his voice strong. "A hollow, selfish thing used to control and manipulate. But Beatrice taught me about something greater, the legacy of choice. It's not about what you inherit in blood, but what you build with purpose." He lifted his head. "That's why tonight, I'm announcing the creation of the Beatrice Weller Accessibility Fund, $25 million in scholarships and seed funding for innovators who were told they'd never make it, but are ready to prove otherwise." The ballroom exploded into applause. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, crying. The thunder of it filled the air. Through the chaos, I saw security, already briefed by Daniel, approaching table 1. They escorted Richard, Margaret, and Mark Reeves out under the harsh camera flashes. For the first time in their lives, my parents looked small. Their empire of image had crumbled in seconds. They had to pass my table on their way out. I stood. Margaret stopped, her face twisted with fury. "You," she hissed. I didn't raise my voice. I simply picked up the folder Daniel had prepared. "This," I said evenly, handing it to her, "is a temporary restraining order. Effective immediately." She recoiled. "And this," I added, setting another file on top, "is the packet of evidence already submitted to the SEC, detailing how you and Richard misused corporate funds to bankroll a fraudulent lawsuit." My father's face flushed deep red. "I'm sure your shareholders will find it enlightening," I said quietly. Then I looked my mother in the eyes. "Goodbye, Margaret." They were led out through the flashes and whispers. The aftermath was swift. The video of Ryan's speech went viral. Ellsworth Publications stock nosedived, then collapsed. The board called an emergency meeting and voted my parents out in disgrace. Mark Reeves was indicted for perjury and fraud. Last week, Ryan and I signed the first check from the Beatrice Fund, a full scholarship for a brilliant young engineer, a single mother from Dorchester. They tried to steal my son's legacy. They tried to weaponize mine. So we built something they couldn't touch. Legacy isn't about blood. It's not about what you're owed. It's about what you build. Family isn't inheritance. Family is choice. And we chose ours.